This man is an amazing part of our military who has done service for our country so beautifully, and we welcome him to speak to us today.
Oh, you'll pardon. Whoa, a little too close. You'll pardon me if I get a little choked up there. I do get emotional at things like this. That was pretty impressive, but then I did write that, so. But it's all true. Rest assured, it's all true. I guess Salvation Army soldier out there. I was asked to give a speech, and not to pick on the Kiwanis, but I was kind of expecting a podium. So when you do a speech, it's a podium. So sorry about that, Carson. I had to say that. But if I was asking a few comments extemporaneous, then I would need a podium. But given the nature of the day, I actually took the time to sit down with pen and paper and craft a speech. So I'm going to read it. So you'll forgive me if I stand here with this folder. I'll do my best not to be distracting. Fair enough? Okay, thank you so much. I normally prefer to look at my audience rather than look at a piece of paper. I find that that's quite annoying. That's what politicians do, and at least at the moment, I'm still not one of those. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Americans and patriots. Welcome to the Field of Honor, where foreign flags fly and tell a story. Well, actually, they tell many stories of veterans, those who've served our great nation in times of war and peace. I encourage you to walk the field while they remain posted here over the next week, as just mentioned. See these flags that represent individual veterans, soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and Merchant Marine. Men and women who, regardless of origin or faith, donned our nation's uniforms and gave of themselves to support the Constitution and defend our liberties and freedoms. I'd like to thank all of you who came today for your presence, your interest, and your patriotism. I do find it heartwarming. As you can see, it's a little emotional for me too. I'd also like to thank the Kiwanis for this effort. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? I mean, look at that. That's really amazing. I came out here, did a recon last night, just to make sure I found the right place, and all the flags were up, and there were some lights, so good job. And I'd also like to thank especially Carson Meyer for extending the invitation to me. He asked me to come last year, but I had a scheduling conflict at last minute and had to change. I had to go to the United Kingdom, so don't feel bad for me, but I apologize for not being here last year. It is an honor to stand here in this beautiful sight of 400 flags with you wonderful folks. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 18th, 1918. November 11th, 1918. A day known as Armistice Day, as it ended the fighting on the Western Front in the First World War. The so-called war to end all wars was catastrophic and deadly for all involved. Shortly after the conflict ended, it became known as in Commonwealth countries as Remembrance Day. But it was also celebrated in France and the United States. In 1926, a congressional resolution officially named this date as Armistice Day, and it became a federal holiday in 1938. By 1947, when Raymond Weeks held the first officially organized Veterans Day in Kansas, it had become clear that, sadly, the hope that the war to end all wars was ephemeral and not to be. In 1954, Congress sent a bill to the White House, and President Eisenhower signed that into law, proclaiming the day as Veterans Day. And with that brief introduction of what the day is about, let us turn our attention to this beautiful Field of Honor and what we see here today. So what exactly is a flag? Seems like a fair question. What's the purpose of a flag? Well, flags are everywhere and they represent many different things. While flags are mainly associated with geographical regions, countries, and nations, they also represent organizations, groups, universities, and even causes. A flag is a distinctive piece of fabric used as a symbol, a signaling device, or a decoration. We cannot for certain pinpoint the origins of flag or the date that they first appeared. However, they have been linked to symbols as far back as the 11th century BC in China. Flags were also used prominently in ancient Egypt and Rome. In ancient India, they were carried on chariots and elephants. While representing monarchs, emperors, and political entities, the flag soon became a useful military tool. Flags helped identify units on the battlefield, were a means of communications for signaling, and became a symbol that was not to be treated lightly. The colors became the first object of attack in battle, and their fall would frequently result in confusion or chaos, often leading directly to defeat in battle. In medieval Europe, flags began to take on all sorts of shapes and sizes. They morphed into guidons, or as many of us know from the Army, unit flags, streamers, banners, standards, and pennons, which is another word for pennants, in case you're wondering what pennons are. But they often represented noble families. But the most common became the standard. The standard was the largest flag and was intended from its size to be stationary. It marked the position of an important individual before battle, during a siege, throughout a ceremony, or at a tournament, like jousting. It also came to represent the presence of someone of importance, a tradition that carries on today for heads of state and even general officers in our military. In that era in Europe, the standard could be used to mark the palace, the castle, the tent, or ship where the monarch was present. However, flags are not simply used on land, but at sea as well. Ships began to use flags at sea to signal each other and to enter and exit harbors. National flags often include symbols and or colors. For instance, many European countries or political entities incorporate the Christian cross into their flag. This includes all Scandinavian countries like Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Iceland. Great Britain's Union Jack, which we know so well, is the result of combining 3 Christian crosses. The crosses of St. George, representing England, St. Andrew, representing Scotland, and of course, St. Patrick, representing Ireland. In the Islamic world, green is prevalent on national flags, like that of Saudi Arabia and Algeria. European royalty also adopted coats of arms that soon became the basis of their flags. Although these heraldic devices have largely disappeared from modern national flags, the colors that were used in the coat of arms remain for Poland, Belgium, Germany, Spain, Hungary, Luxembourg, and Monaco's national flags. Austria, San Marino, and Liechtenstein, smaller countries, still keep the heraldic devices on their flags. While the history of flags may be interesting, or perhaps not for some of you, we are here for the 400 American flags that you see on this Field of Honor. Our flag, though it has been modified from time to time, has stood as a symbol of freedom and justice for over 246 years. The sight of the American flag has given notice to foes and assurances to friends that democracy lives in peace and in conflict. On June 14, 1777, the Continental Congress adopted the Stars and Stripes as the official flag for the United States of America. Congress had to act, as the previous year the Declaration of Independence sort of made it necessary to develop our own national flag. Each colony already had its own flag, but now, fighting for our independence from Imperial Great Britain, we needed a national symbol. The American flag has flown without interruption since 1777. Stars and Stripes represents all that is great about America. It embodies the very qualities that make our nation great: liberty, justice, freedom, love of country, and national purpose. The American flag is also a living piece of history and a source of pride and unity for Americans. The original American flag was designed to represent the new union of the 13 original states. It would have 13 stripes, alternate red and white, and 13 stars, white on a field of blue. The flag has been modified from time to time. However, since 1818, at congressional direction, we have retained the flag's original 13 stripes that represent the original 13 states to enter the Union. We simply add new stars to reflect each new state as it enters the Union. Since its inception, Americans have fought for and died to preserve the ideals of representative democracy represented by our flag. Over 41 million Americans and foreign nationals have served in our uniforms, over 16 million in World War II alone. Today, there are 18 million living veterans, many here with us. 7.8 million are Gulf War era veterans, or 43% of all living veterans. 5.6 million are Vietnam era veterans, or 30% of living veterans. 767,000 Korean War and 1950s era veterans remain with us today, or 4% of our living veterans. Unfortunately, fewer than 120,000 of our 16 million who served in World War II remain with us today. They represent 1% of our living veterans. An incredible accomplishment to get this far. It's amazing. Serving our nation is becoming less and less common. In 1980, 18% of all adults, men and women, were veterans. Nearly 1 in 5 Americans was a veteran. But by 2022, that figure dropped to just 6%. Now, in large measure, this reflects the transition to an all-volunteer force that took place in 1973. In the future, you will see fewer and fewer American military veterans. Between 1980 and 2018, the veteran population declined by a third from 26.4 million Americans to just 18 million has declined since then. It's projected to continue declining so that by 2040, there'll be just 12.9 million living American veterans, less than half of what it was in 1980. Now, I mention this not to lament the fact that the number of veterans is declining, but to note how what was once common experience for most men and many women is now something only a small segment of society experiences. Consequently, most Americans do not know what it means to serve in uniform. They do not know the professional and personal sacrifices their fellow Americans make on their behalf, defending the Constitution at home and in challenging locales abroad. They cannot know the trauma and horror of conflict. Thank goodness. They will not know the countless personal sacrifices our veterans make and have made. Now, I say these things not to elicit empathy or sympathy. After all, we're no more special than any other American. The distinction, if one exists, is that just like first responders, EMTs, firefighters, and law enforcement officers, our military serves our nation each and every day. We stand or have stood on that wall defending freedom on all our behalf. When you thank a veteran for his or her service, do not forget that your thanks embodies much more than simple and brief phrase, "Thank you for your service." It means a lot, and we're grateful, and as are the veterans represented by these 400 flags, as well as their families and descendants. Now, on a personal note, I enlisted in the Army at the age of 18 after a year at university, not studying, getting bad grades, running around, enjoying college life. But I came to the Army at the age of 18 because I started college when I was 17. And I've spent most of my adult life in uniform, 36 and a half years in the U.S. Army, 34 of those active duty, 23 of those served overseas. That includes a dozen foreign tours, multiple combat tours, peacekeeping tours. Now, that may impress some folks, but something that happened a long time ago is among my most cherished responsibilities while serving in uniform. As a young soldier in Germany during the Cold War, I was fortunate enough to be selected for the 8th Infantry Division Color Guard and got the privilege of carrying the nation's colors in countless ceremonies and during funerals for our veterans. It was something I competed for, to be on the Color Guard and to carry our nation's colors. It wasn't just handed to me. I still cherish that responsibility to this day, nearly 40 years later. So I thank you all for coming today and listening to old soldiers ramblings about flag. I hope you leave with a deeper appreciation for what the flag represents and why it matters. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Wyatt, for your messages, for your service, and for your emotion. Because I get it every once in a while, too. Again, thank you all for being here. I hope you can take the next little bit of time to wander around our field of honor